see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Okay, I'm told that we have a live stream. Let's start admitting some more folks. Let's see how it goes. Okay, I'm told that we have a live stream. If somebody has the YouTube open, you need to admitting some more folks. You need to mute it because we're going to get an echo.
The room.
Okay, I'm told that we have a live stream. If somebody has the YouTube open, you need to getting some more does somebody have the YouTube? We're going to get an echo. Does somebody have the YouTube open on their device? The easiest thing to do, I think, Dee, that might be you. Can you mute? Can you mute, Dee?
I just muted myself.
Okay.
Now I've lost this thing. How have I lost it? Oh, here.
Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to the November meeting of the Upper West Side Coalition. We're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome, coalition members and panelists. Please stay muted so we keep the chaos to a minimum. If you have community news, we're going to save it to the end. We're live streaming to YouTube as we've been doing. And for those who are new to us, the coalition was established early this year to help existing block associations and support the creation of new ones. We share a commitment to raise awareness and share information around areas of concern for Upper West Side residents, including tonight's topic, which is the situation for our local businesses. Our coalition programming chair is Liz DeVito, and she's going to moderate the meeting. So I'm going to turn this over to Liz. And again, welcome everybody.
Thanks, Chris. And again, welcome everybody. So I think we have a really interesting panel tonight to talk about local business issues. And on the panel, the speakers are the leaders of the 3 business improvement districts that cover the Upper West Side. That's Peter Arnstedt, if I said that right, from the Columbus Amsterdam bid, Monica Blum and Phil Gordon from the Lincoln Square bid, and Nicole Painter from the Columbus Avenue bid. But I also want to point out that we have some people in our audience from organizations that could also help answer questions that come up, and including some members of the executive committee of Upper West Side Save Our Stores. And also Doug Kleiman is in our audience tonight. Doug is a lifelong resident of the Upper West Side and a real estate broker serving the commercial and residential markets. He's also vice chair of Community Board 7. And there are some questions came in about the community board and how it works to support local businesses. So Doug will aim to help out with answering those questions. So Chris, did you want to get community news now or at the very end of the program?
We'll do the community news at the end.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is go around the room and hear from each bid leader. We're going to start with Peter from the Columbus Amsterdam bid. Peter, are you here? Do I see you? I don't
Yes.
see you.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
You're going to
So
go
sorry.
first.
Really? Oh, geez. Okay.
Welcome. And then we're going
Thank
to
you.
move on after Peter. What it's going to do is going to ask the bid leader to spend about 5 to 7 minutes talking about the top issues in their district. And then we'll open up to the floor for questions from the audience. And then we'll move on to the next bid. And the second person we'll hear from is Nicole Painter from the Columbus Avenue bid. And then we'll end with Phil and Monica from the Lincoln Square bid. But if questions come up, all of you leaders that, in some other person's segment, feel free to jump in and, and help out with the answer. But, after each presentation, we'll take questions from the audience. So let's get started. So Peter, what is happening with the Columbus Amsterdam bid and small businesses? Oh, you're on mute, Peter.
That's happened before. Okay, let's see. We have been running an open streets for Amsterdam Avenue that started 2 Augusts ago, and that made a huge difference for the small businesses in our neighborhood. We were able to expand that through DOT. DOT went out on a limb in granting us this because it should not have happened, because it is an avenue that is both a truck route and a bus route. But they gave us permission, and it has been a huge boost for the small businesses up here during the pandemic and during the pause. So that has been the focus of our work for the past year and a half. Before that, I mean, this neighborhood, we operate between 96th Street and 110th Street on Amsterdam and Columbus. The majority of our businesses are small businesses, many of them run by immigrants, and there's a tremendous variety. We do have the section down by Whole Foods, which is basically a mall that was brought in the past 5 years, 5 to 10 years. In any case, but our focus has been on the small businesses. They are the majority of who we are working with. Over the years, we have had a monthly events calendar that we printed 11,000 of and distributed in the neighborhood to let people know that there were things going on. We've done things like the Bloomingdale Family Days, which was a weekend walks program where we were able to close off the streets and have neighborhood organizations come out and city agencies come out and provide activities and information about their programs. And that was a big boost for the neighborhood. For a couple of years, we did a taste Bloomingdale, and that was semi-positive for some of the small restaurants. We decided it wasn't what we wanted to be doing. So there was that. And then we also work closely with the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group, which does walks and talks. So they have what has become virtual talks about the history, looking at the neighborhood and providing stories that highlight some of the interesting aspects of the neighborhood. And then we also have walks that happen on a monthly basis, and those have recently been reinstated. Jim Mackin is a local historian who is leading those, and they were also paused for about a year, but recently he started doing them again on a monthly basis, and that gives people a chance to walk around the neighborhood and see the character of it, which is very positive, and it provides a chance for for people to see, like I said, the character of the neighborhood and see some of the unique aspects of this neighborhood. So those were the principal programs, other than our obvious cleaning and safety issues, which is part of most bids activities. If people have questions, I'd be glad to take them. Those are, I will say that the open streets has been huge. And it was in part because of our work with the weekend walks. They knew that we could pull this off, or that they thought we could pull it off. And so that's where we are today.
Great, thank you. So let's open up to the floor, and I'll get started with a question for you that I'm going to ask each bid leader, which is, how does your bid engage with the local community, like block associations? That's because we are a coalition of block associations. We're very interested to know how we can engage with the bids and other community organizations to help improve the quality of life. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of engagement with the local community, but is there anything with block associations that you do?
We have worked closely with the West 107th Street Block Association. In the past, we worked closely with DEBNA, Duke Ellington Boulevard Neighborhood Association, which is on 106th Street, east of Amsterdam. And the 107th Street one is between Broadway and Amsterdam. We have worked in the past with other block associations. Those are the two principal ones up in our neighborhood at the moment. And I will say that I guess there was the Northwest Central Park Block Association, which was along Central Park. And we've worked with them occasionally. And for a while, there was one up at 110th Street that we worked with. And in part, it's looking at activities that are going to be positive. We've done things along the lines of plantings with them. We've done programming with them, sometimes music programming. I will say that there are issues. Block associations tend to have a certain amount of privilege and entitlement. That means that certain people don't get listened to or don't get approached. And that is one of the things that we try and do up here, is to talk to people from all backgrounds and try and get a sense of what their concerns are and what brings them joy. I mean, what makes the neighborhood worthwhile for them. And it's sort of there's not a formula for that, other than just being available and talking to people and being willing to deal with all the nuts in the neighborhood and realizing that you're one of them. So that's sort of where I'm at. So anyway.
Okay, great, thank you. Does anybody else in the audience have a question for Peter? Neil, you should unmute, please. Neil Burson. And introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Neil Burson. I'm co-president of the West 90s Neighborhood Association. And I'd like to ask Peter, what strategy or tactics have you developed to deal with all of the scaffolding that accompanies not only new construction, but also local law 10 and 11 certification inspection processes and restoration work?
We do not have a protocol. We do not have a good method for dealing with it. We have been lucky to a degree in that we have small property owners that realize that the scaffolding is a problem for them and for their tenants. Where we get larger property owners, it's the communication breaks down. And that's, I don't have an answer for that. The Bid Association, which is a grouping of about over 70 bids in the New York City area, has looked at it repeatedly over the past 10, 15 years and has come up with different designs. But probably Nicole or Phil could talk more to those, or Monica. I mean, of course, Monica could.
Right. So I'll just tell you about scaffolds, and I've tried very hard. There is a much nicer scaffold out there called the Urban Umbrella, which my colleague on Madison Avenue has had a few places have used it. And I've promoted it to my members. It's about 20% more expensive. It is beautiful. It's more than 20% more expensive. And so far, no one has taken us up on the offer, which the company would offer a discount, not enough to offset the cost. But we're going to keep trying. It is absolutely beautiful. It's much higher. It's really elegant. It was the winner of the city's design. You know, they had a competition. So I think if there were funding for property owners, that would help. But it's still so expensive that I haven't been successful, and I have really tried. I keep pushing it. But so
perhaps you can explain in a few words what the distinctive difference in design is that makes that a more attractive, better.
Well, I don't think I can. And I think I'm not, I'm not seeing as well as I usually do since I had my second eye done yesterday. But I think if you Google urban umbrella, Doug probably knows because there are some East Side properties that have it as well as West Side properties. If you Google urban umbrella, it's right there on the screen. It's white, it's tall, it's got these lovely arches, lighting is built in. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, it's really an elegant design. And I did see a property on the Upper East Side at 86th Street, and I said, ooh, that looks like urban umbrella. Is it? I asked the urban umbrella person about 2 weeks ago. He said it's a pretty good knockoff. It's not as pretty, but it's white. And that is one of the things that makes it nicer. So I'll try to pull it up. But that's...
And I'll second what Monica's saying is the arches and that it's a good amount higher, that both make it much more attractive. So just to be aware of that.
Maybe
Peter?
Phil can pull it up because I'm not good at, oh, he's pulled it up. No, that's a knockoff. I don't think that's it. Unless you got it from Urban Umbrella. Doesn't look right to me.
I'll try to
Somebody
keep
said my
looking.
name.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Monica
Somebody-
said that it didn't look like an urban umbrella, the
Oh, I
picture that was put up.
Okay.
Anyway, there are a couple of questions coming through the chat room. Is this a good time to share them?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, are they specific to a bid or they don't have to be, but
Yeah, they came through while Peter was talking.
okay.
So Peter, hi, long time no see. It's been a while. First question comes from Deborah Brewster. She says, do you support greater fines for landlords who have scaffolding or sheds up for more than a year?
No, we did not.
Okay. Another question from Jake Russell. How do you think about recruiting businesses to move their operation to the Upper West Side?
I'm pleased whenever a small business opens up in our neighborhood. I'm looking particularly for small businesses. They, I think, are more resilient and provide greater character for neighborhoods, which means that people are going to come to the neighborhood rather than going to a national store. National stores draw a lot of people, but they don't do much for a neighborhood, and can be detractions. So I don't want to grab people from or grab organizations from other places, but we want to have interesting stores in our neighborhood. And right now we've focused on restaurants because restaurants can provide, people come back to restaurants, and we need to bring money into our neighborhood. So we need people that come on many visits, not just once or twice a year. And restaurants do that. We've also looked at antique stores. We've looked at craft stores. We've looked at places that have classes or lessons. And we have a couple of those, but we've never been able to build a, for lack of a better term, a cohort, a mass that makes our neighborhood known for those things. Right now we rely heavily on restaurants, and that's where we're at.
Did your bid lose a lot of businesses during the pandemic? And do you think that they'll return?
During the first 3 months, basically everything closed down. It was just awful. It was incredibly depressing to be out on the street. But once we made it to the summer, places started to open up. We got the approval for the open streets, and all of a sudden we had people coming back, and we had restaurants opening up, and where there were some that had closed down for good, new ones opened. We had something like half a dozen new businesses open within a couple of months of the open streets, or a couple, let's say 3 or 4 months. But just open streets was a tremendous boon for this neighborhood. That's what I can tell you.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Jake and Deborah, for your questions.
Okay, let's move on to the next bit. I'm sure some of these topics will continue to be addressed, but Nicole Painter, Executive Director of the Columbus Avenue bid. What is the district? What are the boundaries of your bid?
Where we go from West 67th on the east side, Monica's district Lincoln Square bid has the west side of 67th up until 82nd, and we cover 50 feet into the side street at each crossing, but mainly Columbus Avenue from 67th to 82nd. And we also cover the Museum of Natural History, loop around.
Oh, okay. That's a very active neighborhood, a lot happening there. So what has been your focus over the last couple of years?
Sure, yeah, so our focus pre-pandemic was really about, supplemental sanitation, beautification, marketing of our businesses, and we sort of had that down pat. And then the pandemic hit. So we've sort of shifted a bit in that we've continued to do supplemental sanitation and beautification, but we've put a lot more effort into really trying to do programming and projects that will draw people out onto our avenue. So last winter, we did art on the avenue in our vacant storefronts. We created a gallery walk in our vacant storefronts, which was a great project for the neighborhood. We also partnered with Landmark West this summer to do sort of a small walking tour that had stories about different buildings in our district and the history of them and whatnot. And then we brought back Taste of the Upper West Side this October 1st and 2nd, which was a huge success. Fully vaccinated event, and it was really safe, and we changed sort of the layout to make sure there was more open air, but we were excited to have that back. And then we also introduced the Open Streets program on Columbus Avenue from 68th to 77th Streets every Sunday. We just ended it. This past Sunday was our final one. So that was really a great program to draw people out, people that hadn't really explored our neighborhood, and just to add some more activity and get people out and shopping at our stores and having some fun. So that's sort of really what a lot of our efforts have gone into. I'm the only employee, so I guess my efforts have gone into doing all of those things. And then we're still focused on trying to give the direct support to our businesses as we can, and helping them with any regulatory hurdles they might have and whatnot. But really pushing the programming and marketing to get people out and shopping for our small businesses.
Okay.
Yep.
So any questions from the audience for Nicole and the Columbus Avenue bid? Dale?
Yeah,
Introduce yourself.
I'm Dale Brown, and I'm president of the West 79th Street Block Association. Nicole, I'd like to find out from you, did you speak to the individual block associations explaining about the closing of this very main avenue from 77th to 68th Street?
Yes, I did some outreach. I know that we spoke ahead of time about it. I will admit that maybe I did not speak to every single block association and could have done better. I did work with the community board, the 20th precinct, FDNY, DOT, to try to do my due diligence. But as always, I could do better with communication and outreach on that end. I didn't hear much after it started from anyone about specific problems, but I would be open to hearing if anyone had problems with the open streets. We don't want to cause problems for the community, so.
Had major problems, Nicole, and I did call you and I did email you. On West 79th Street, we had the rerouting of the buses 7-Eleven, and also, of course, we have the crosstown bus going west. We had garbage trucks coming down our block. We had trucks coming down our blocks, and we had a lot of vehicular traffic, which was making U-turns when they were going east and they saw the mess on Columbus Avenue. There didn't seem to be anybody directing traffic at 77th Street. And the cars were not really in any kind of lanes. And they realized if they were stuck there, they had to make a right or a left. There was also parking where the bus stop is on 78th Street, and there was no one moving the cars, which also created more difficult traffic problems there, and people honking their horns, and there was double parking also. And it didn't seem like anybody from the bid was there. When I spoke to Captain Zuber, he said he was very much against closing Columbus Avenue and the mess that it was going to make, and the period of time that the avenue was going to be closed. I also got a lot of complaints from the Green Market, because when it was time for them to leave, they couldn't leave with their trucks because of all the traffic situation. So I think that really needs to be reevaluated. I know many of us walked the avenue, and it didn't seem like many of the restaurants had placed their tables outside or actually tried to draw people into their establishments. So I'm not quite sure of how successful that was. And I certainly hope it's going to be reevaluated for next year. Thank you.
I take all that into consideration, and for next year, for planning, nothing's been decided. We found it to be a great success, but if people felt otherwise, I'm happy to hear feedback. I didn't get much feedback from it, but let's talk offline as well. I talked to Captain Zuber in advance, so I didn't hear that opinion from him, but maybe I'm always open to hearing more. We did a lot of surveys and outreach, and hopefully we'll get a good feel for if people liked it and how to make it better for everyone.
Peter, did you want to say something?
With the open streets, I will say that when you get, there's a certain amount of positivity that just comes from not just from the restaurants, but also from the residents and the public being able to walk the streets and have a presence on the streets. Right now, there's a number of vehicles that are sort of out of control and going too fast. And it's all a work in progress. I mean, for the police, for DOT, for us, certainly, but for the city. And I don't know where it's going to come out. But it is something that you get people that are very, very strong, have a very strong opinion. And it's something that we are going to all have to deal with. So that's my thought. Sorry.
Do you know, Peter or Nicole, which city agency administers open streets? Because we had open streets on my block in the West 70s a year ago. And it's simply, the execution was non-existent. Like the barriers were not removed at 8 p.m. You know, it was just, it was not managed. And I'm just wondering which agency actually runs open streets.
Well, it's through the DOT, but organizations have to put in an application to run the program themselves. It's through DOT with all the regulations through DOT, but as an organization, then we run it ourselves, or whoever signed up in your neighborhood was supposed to run it themselves. That's my understanding.
And I think that there is some funding through SBS. I think some of our colleagues in the outer boroughs have gotten some support because they don't have the manpower to do all the things that you have to do for open streets. I don't have the details on that, but I do believe there is, and I think there was also support for non-business improvement districts, but neighborhood groups that wanted to do open streets. So I think, you know, we can try to, Phil, I hope you're making notes. We can try to get the contact information, but it is going to be run by DOT, and some people have concerns about that because it's going to be a different program now that at least open restaurants are going to be different. You know, they're basically, it's an odd choice for an agency, in my opinion, to run some of these activities, but that's what I think anyhow.
Okay, Penny Shaw, do you have something? You're on mute, Penny.
There we go. Sorry. I'm on West 69th Street, and we have a lot of restaurants that are actually in the street already. Before you even open the street, they're already out there. What's the BID's policy on this? What's the relationship of BID to the restaurants that have expanded out onto the street?
Well, I can talk to the ones on 69th, so maybe I should, because they're not really in our district, but we have supported them. Why am I blocking on the name? But we have supported the restaurants that are just outside our doors that are in open streets. We promote them. We've not gotten any complaints. The Israeli one is what I'm thinking about, which is
Noidui.
Right, Noidui, and now Noidui Pizza. I don't know, they have several iterations. But we do support, you know, we think it's good if it's well done, and that one happens to be well done. I think it's been quite successful. I also think that the Leopard has an absolutely beautiful, it's fancy schmancy, but a beautiful setup on West 67, and we have promoted them. Again, they're outside our district. So the few that are just outside our boundaries, we will promote as we do.
I'm thinking about the ones on Columbus Avenue, 69th and Columbus, the little Mexican one next to Magnolia, where you just can't even walk there. I very often walk with a person who has a disability. You can't walk on the sidewalk. There isn't enough room. The tables are there. So people are sitting and eating, but the pedestrians can't get through. So I'm just curious to know is there any policy at all about that? As it is, the sidewalks have gotten so narrow, like by Magnolia, you can't walk there under the best of circumstances. You certainly can't walk with a walker or a wheelchair or someone next to you. And accessibility is one of my principles, something that I work with, and it's gotten really out of control if you try to get from 69th to 70th on the west side of Columbus.
As with all of our restaurants, we definitely support the outdoor dining, and we encourage everyone to follow the regulations as DOT has made them. If there's any issues with specific businesses, I'd love to work with the community to chat with the business or flag issues to them if you have them, for sure. And a lot of our businesses are really open to making sure that they're not making issues for their residential neighbors. So I know what you're talking about, and I would love to.
You know the block I'm speaking about?
Yeah, I would love to.
Just walk there, you'll see. Pretend you're walking with someone who has difficulty walking, and you'll see.
Absolutely. I would love to continue the conversation with you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Great, let's do it.
Great. Well, let's move on to our third bid, Lincoln Square. Monica, will you be taking the microphone here, or Phil, you're on mute. Monica, you're on mute.
Phil was my backup because I
Oh, okay.
wasn't sure that I was going to be able to make this tonight, but I am
Okay.
here. So we're somewhat different from my colleagues to the north. We do not have as many small businesses as they do, but I have to say that things are really looking and have been looking up in Lincoln Square for a while now, because we've had quite a few smaller businesses open, new businesses, which is quite exciting. And our vacancy rate is not that terrible, 13.4%. And of the 44 restaurants in the district, 39 are now open. And that's pretty good. I have to say we are encouraged by what we've seen. Our focus has always been on supporting all our retailers. And what we've done since COVID is, rather than sending out an e-blast every 2 weeks, we send out a weekly e-blast, and we promote all the businesses in the district, but particularly the smaller retailers and the restaurants. And we, we'll write stories. It's a very challenging undertaking for us to get something. I'm such a stickler on spelling errors and accuracy, so I drive everyone nuts. But so we have about 4,500 subscribers, and I just got an email while I was on with you from one of our small little restaurants, Botaniste, which is on 68th, 67th, 68th, on the west side of Columbus. And she just said, we have a Thanksgiving menu. Would you promote it? And I said, of course. And she sent me already some artwork. So that'll go out next week. And we do that regularly. We're always really trying to promote particularly our smaller retailers. We've maintained throughout the pandemic our focus on clean and safe and beautiful. We haven't missed a beat in terms of fundraising for our beautification program. My clean team is fully staffed, and we're probably going to bring on one more person if we can find somebody in a couple of months. Our public safety team is understaffed. We don't understand it. We go through people, they start and then they quit, partly because they're outside all the time and they don't want to walk. And this is an outdoor patrol, but we keep increasing the starting salary, and we have a hard time finding people. We now have, I think, 2 women, right, Phil? Is it 2? Yeah, we have 2 women. And that's great. I'm thrilled. We had a third, but we don't know if she's coming back. And then we do a lot of troubleshooting in the neighborhood I've really spent a lot of time on the horrible construction project on 64th Street, which has really immobilized the neighborhood. And talk about Penny's comment about accessibility. I mean, you can't walk, you could not walk, you could not cross 64th Street. So I've spent a lot of time. We now have a weekly meeting with all the players, and I'm hoping that this project that's really immobilized, it's really paralyzed the neighborhood, will be winding down. I got them to reroute the school buses for ethical culture because kids weren't getting there on time, and a restaurant couldn't open before when the Metropolitan Opera started. So, that we've really had a major role in that, and I'm actually very proud of it because we really put a lot of pressure on everybody. I think that, there are a lot of new places opening. The smaller ones are really, that's what we're getting, smaller places. Not all restaurants, I wish they all were, but a couple of shops. Arc'teryx is the most recent, very upscale. And that's sort of a nice segue to the other thing we've spent a lot of time on, and that's working with our local precinct and Patrol Borough Manhattan North, because there has been a real increase in larcenies. It's larcenies, right, Phil? Yeah, larcenies. And, you know, Arc'teryx, the minute it opened, they just had one theft after another. Large quantities of clothing were stolen. So we're now trying to do sort of more dedicated patrol with our public safety. The cops are too, but they're not around as much as we would like. But in that same vein, we've really had a great relationship with the local precinct. And we've worked very closely with Monahan, who's the head of the Commercial District Revitalization Program, which that was just for business improvement districts. And those of us in Patrol Borough Manhattan North, Peter and Nicole and myself, and a couple of other bids, we meet pretty regularly, I would say every 6 weeks, and we go through our agendas. And as a result of that, a couple of things. First of all, we've had some effect, not huge, but some effect on the many homeless that we have. And, I'm screaming all the time, they should send nurses, because they just send outreach people and all they do is chat and then they go away. So we have had success. We had someone a couple of weeks ago who was obviously in medical distress, sitting on a bench in Dante Park, and at 8:30 in the morning, Phil saw him, and then we called homeless outreach, and then I showed up and we said, you've got to send a nurse. So first outreach came, nothing happened. And then a nurse came and she got this guy into an ambulance and he has not been back. I'm hoping he got help. We've also been trying to deal with the little lady who drags her garbage, 25 million pounds of black bags up and down Columbus. And they can't deal with her because the city will do a cleanup and get rid of garbage, but they have to give notice. And she's smart, this woman, and she's also, she's smart. She moves. So if they say we're going to clean up tomorrow at such and such a location, she'll be across the street, and that they can't do a cleanup. So we've had no success with her, and I have to say I've lost sleep because sometimes she's in the middle of the road. But along that same line, Phil developed, I'd say 6 months ago or 8 months ago, a really good list of all the security directors in the neighborhood and all the property managers. And so that's a communications link that we use when there's a real problem. And we also had a meeting with them a couple of weeks ago with Patrol Borough Manhattan North, because they really don't know how to deal with emotionally disturbed who come into a store and then don't leave. And even a place like Apple, which has a very good public, they have private security. They had a real problem with a couple of people over one weekend. So that was pretty helpful. The police were very good, made a bunch of suggestions. There is no doubt that having security in the store helps. I think Target finally learned that because they were not doing that for a while. So I would say our biggest challenge right now is, and we also had musical storefronts in one of our vacant stores. Kaufman Cultural Center programmed a large space for, 4 or 5 months. It was just fabulous. And we're not doing Winter's Eve, but we are going to have a tree, which is coming on Friday. Parks Department is installing it. And we have a nice program it's going to be, some of the ornaments are very ordinary, traditional. I don't like that. But we've partnered with a small store in our district on Amsterdam Avenue called Color Me Mine. She's an amazing businesswoman, and she's just a great community partner. And she's inviting children in to decorate ornaments for our tree. They're stars, and they're free because we're paying for these ornaments. So if you come in and you paint something for Hanukkah or whatever, Christmas, she'll give you one of our ornaments and you can decorate it. So we're going to put those on the tree. And then I'm going to have a few other interesting things on this tree. And then we are going to be doing, and I can't really give out any details yet, we're going to do a series in December of pop-up musical surprises. They're going to be sort of unannounced. They're going to be in 2 windows of time, you know, noontime and early evening. We're going to try to capture all the foot traffic that's going to and from the Lincoln Center campus, Big Apple Circus, Nutcracker, the Metropolitan Opera. And these will be pop-up. There will be no production whatsoever. Outdoors, we'll do a rain date. There'll be no sound, no sound. So whoever we hire to do this will have to make enough noise singing on their own or whatever. And then we're trying to figure out how to get our restaurants involved, but I will not bring food over to the park because I'm not going to go through the health department. I just can't deal with that anymore. So I don't know, we're just going to encourage people to do something during the holiday season. So the biggest vacancies that I have are the biggest stores. And unfortunately, some of them are really hard to divide. They have large basements. And that's a worry. And I don't know, the property owners are trying very hard to fill them, but we'll see what happens. So that I think I covered everything, sort of.
Yeah, thank you. But Monica, you're touching on something, some questions are coming in. You're touching on something that is of interest to the audience also, which is that there is a significant part of the Upper West Side that does not have a bid. And that is the Broadway Corridor, from Lincoln Center all the way up. And
not from Lincoln Center. No, we go up to 70th on Broadway.
Okay.
We
So, and
stop
that,
at 70th.
right. Well, and Broadway, of course, is where a lot of the big stores are. So I was wondering if one of the big leaders could explain, perhaps you,
I
Monica.
can explain it. There's a lot of history there.
Well,
So
basically, what people want to know is how would you start a bid? What are the
So let me give you some background on Broadway north of our district. When we were formed 27 years ago, there was a conscious decision made not to go north of 70th, partly because the 72nd Street subway had not been renovated yet. And also there was not a lot of, and that's still to some extent true, there weren't a lot of taxpayers because, bid property owners pay an assessment. And our formula is unusual. It's not like the other bids in the city. So we didn't go north. And then I would say about 3 years after we were formed, there was an effort to form a bid on Broadway north of 70th, and they could not get any traction at all. It was done by the Broadway Mall Association, and they just didn't get anybody to sign on. There weren't that many big property owners, and no one was interested. There was also an effort, several efforts actually, to start a bid on 72nd Street. Arlene Simon did a great job revitalizing 72nd, and then they sort of went away. And we offered in both cases to help, to help form these bids because they do need help. And I had a million meetings. Then there was another one, I'd say about 4 years ago, they wanted to form one around Verdi Square. Again, we met and we offered to help. We've been doing this for a long time. It is a lengthy process. Usually bids are formed by someone who has a stake in the community and is a community leader and connections with property owners and local organizations. But it requires, it's a major effort. And I did help Chinatown form its bid. I was on that steering committee and then I went on that board for, a couple of years. It was a wonderful experience, but it took them 20 years to form a bid. I also helped and it's gone nowhere as far as I can tell. East 86th Street tried to form a bid, and I was on that steering committee. And what's happened there is I don't think it's going to make it because it needs a level of property owner support. But there is now a very strong block association on East 86th Street that's doing a lot of the stuff that the bid would have done. The problem is raising the money. We get a dedicated stream of money, and block associations don't. And so it's a lengthy process. The climate has changed on the Upper West Side. On Broadway, for example, there are some, but not too many, bigger property owners. And in our case, we assess based on retail square footage or commercial square footage, office, and then garages. And garages don't pay a lot, but that was one of the issues when we were formed. One of our property owners had a lot of garage space, and they felt you shouldn't charge garages the same amount. And so that's why we have this weird formula. But, I think that it can be done. It is a real challenge. And one of the only other thing I will say is that I think one of the weaknesses in the bid movement are these pockets between bids. So I stop at 58th Street, and then the Times Square bid starts at 53rd. So there's this pocket of blocks that are a mess. And I don't know how that gets changed, but it is really, that's unfortunate. They should be contiguous. If they were contiguous, then, you wouldn't have these sort of abandoned little areas. So I'm happy to help again.
Great. Did you have a question, Steve?
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Anderson from West 81st Street, and I'm honored to also serve as the chair of the board of this coalition. But we are a coalition of block associations and neighborhood groups. We seek to be part of the solution. We want to collaborate in ways that will enhance our block and our community. And we need to figure out ways to collaborate in more complex ways than we have before. We need to figure out ways to be part of the revitalization. I heard Jimmy McMillan start a party years ago called "The Rent's Just Too Damn High." And that's what we hear is one of the problems on Columbus Avenue and around the whole Upper West Side. But I went to Manny's Bistro in Nicole on Sunday night, and I heard some jazz outside, and there were about 25 people enjoying it. And it gave us a sense that maybe we really are the left bank here on Columbus Avenue, that maybe we will come back from this pandemic stronger, but we need to be collaborators with the bids. We need to hear from you, we need to work with you, and we need to find ways that we can instigate the kind of things in our community that brought us here, that why we love living here so much, and the things that we want to address, the problems we need to address. So I'm simply saying from my perspective, we need you, but we need you to really work with us and let us be a part of planning of what you're doing and help us help our community. Be partners with us.
Well, I just want to say that we have worked forever with the West 69th Street, with Shane, West 68th Street Block Association, forever. Whenever he has something, we talk and we'll promote it, and he does the same. So, we do work. We only have, and now we have Chris, who started 6'4" to 6'7". And, there are some issues we disagree on, but it's never stopped us from working together on issues that we can agree on. So I can only speak, I don't have many block associations, and, that is what it is. But I think that, and I'm probably going to get into trouble for this, the rents are high, but my property owners want tenants. And so I don't know what kind of deals they make, but they're bringing in tenants. So that tells me, and I don't get involved in what they charge. I have no idea. But I know that every single one of them wants to fill their vacant spaces. So the one thing I would say is that you need a positive message. And, you know, I think if you want to build an organization that does more than just be a block association, you know, a real association of all the block associations, you need to come up with a really positive message. And let your elected officials focus on the rents too high, because I think that, you know, you are a powerful group. And I think that there are resources that you could probably join forces and try to get. There are grants. SBS is giving out a lot of money to non-bid organizations. So I would spend some time looking, and I don't look, you know, I don't pay that much attention to it, but there are organizations that they support that are not bids. So they support neighborhood organizations. So I think that's what you should look at and figure out, you know, how else you can get resources, because I think that is the answer. You know.
Well, thank you, Monica. You should know we are, and we are getting stronger, and there's more than 20 entities now, from
Right.
59th Street to 110th Street. And in this first year, it's very clear that there's tons of people who really
Right.
want to be a part of a coalition to do some of the things you're talking about and play an active role in trying
Right.
to do things to improve our community.
And then maybe, depending, you know, the neighbor, if there's a core group, you can try to form a bid. That's what, you can't do it, you know, you can't do it for the whole part of the Upper West Side that's not covered by a bid. But you could do something if, you know, if there were a sort of a, I don't want to say the heart of, you know, if there were contiguous areas that, I think you could do it. I think it's definitely doable.
I'm gonna jump in here because someone has raised their hand and wishes to speak. Beth, can you hear me?
Me?
Yeah, did you have
talking-
something? Yes. Did you have something you want? First, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Beth Krieger, president of Upper West Side Save Our Stores. We formed in 2018 to try to do research and educate ourselves about why there were so many store vacancies. We got very involved, and it kind of went on hold right when the pandemic kicked off, which was 1 month after we'd had a town hall meeting with 400 people at Ethical. Did speak to, I think, all of these bid directors at the time, right when we were planning to we were thinking about, well, maybe, you know, maybe we should start or try to help the merchants start a merchants association, because we had been told by SBS and Community Board 7 and everybody else that bids were too hard. But let me just point out the elephant in the room. All of these bids are doing great work, but they're only working for their area. And every single area is very, very different. Lincoln Square area is a very wealthy, very different area than Amsterdam and Columbus above 96th Street. And it's different from Columbus. Well, you know, the other area that's missing is not just Broadway from 70th, I think you said, or 72nd, all the way up, but it's also Amsterdam from the Lincoln Square bid to 96th, and it's Columbus Avenue from 82nd to 96th. So basically we were talking about the 10024 zip code, plus a little bit of 23 and a little bit of 25. All the studies up until the point of the pandemic pointed to the area between 72nd and 86th on Broadway as having one of the highest rates of vacancies. That's changed now in that mid Soho and Midtown has much higher vacancy rates, but that's not helping 10024. If you've been paying attention, Victoria's Secret's closing, DSW's closing. We have more big spaces on Broadway between those 10 blocks that are empty, and they're not going to fill up. So the fact that these other bids, you each are helping market and attract businesses to your area. And by the way, do the street cleanup, which I've got to give big kudos to One Block. If it hadn't been for them, our area in 102.4 would still be a mess. There was nobody helping us clean up. The Broadway Mall does the mall and that's it. But these volunteers, I think Jake was on the call and Ann, I don't think she was, but they have done an unbelievable job as volunteers getting that going. So without a bid or a merchants association or any other kind of alliance that some other areas of the city have, this area has been a wasteland. And we are, I wouldn't say suffering because Amsterdam's been doing very well. And I have to point to some of the zoning that happened probably under Gail Brewer's oversight in the early aughts. Without those small spaces and those lower rents and those smaller landlords, it wouldn't be as robust as it is. But Broadway is really a mess. And I don't know if a bid is possible because it came across a little bit, but bids are formed by the property owners, not by the retailers, not by the merchants who can't afford it right now anyway. And if you can't even find out who those property owners are, which is another transparency problem, you're not going to get anybody helping. And the last thing I wanted to point out is that property, the cost for the bid, the membership is oftentimes passed down to the lessee, to the store owner. They don't even know about that. So there's a lot of problems in this neighborhood. High rents, yes. We also have the pass-throughs of property taxes and bid costs and a lot of other costs. And even though Upper West Side of our stores has been kind of quiet over the last year, we've been watching and we've been supporting a few efforts, including some legislation, including the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce that was going door to door with one guy trying to let our store owners know how they could get PPP and how they could get legal help and how they could get marketing help because we don't have a bid here. And some of our people actually went out with him and we were going door to door as well. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. And we hope that we can work with the Upper West Side Coalition, but you've got to realize how different every single neighborhood is. If you think that it's homogeneous, it's not. It's not monolithic. It's just like landlords are not all the same. There are small business owners who are landlords. There are big LLCs who you're not going to find out who they are, and they've got a lot of problems. And that's actually the LLCs, the big property owners, are the biggest problem we have on Broadway. I had to get a lot of you for letting me speak.
Thanks, Beth. Thank you so much.
I will say, I just want to say something. Retailers have to be, if you form a bid, it's not just property owners. When we were formed, and I have to say it was hard to form our bid. Community board was not on board in the beginning. There were a lot of people who were very, very skeptical, and it took several years of a lot of outreach and talking to people, but we had retailers who recognized the value. And in some instances, it is passed on. That's why it took so long to form a bid in Chinatown, because people were afraid. And, you know, not all bids have budgets like mine. Mine is bigger than my colleagues. So the actual assessment is not as big as you think. And when you look at the value that a retailer gets from the services a bid provides, that's value added. That's really worth a lot. So I think we could form several bids on the Upper West Side, but it's a long process.
Okay. I just want to point out there was a little bit of an echo there. So if somebody is simultaneously watching the YouTube live stream of this meeting, can you please put yourself on mute? I want to, there was a raised hand, Melissa Elstein. Did you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. I actually, Beth, covered most of the comments that I was going to add or ask a question. That was very, very thorough, Beth, and it's great to see you. and what your organization is also doing. But certainly transparency is very important with regard to these LLCs that are owning large swaths of the empty or occupied storefronts. I think there needs to be a lot more transparency with that. And, you know, we could all be chatting about how to create a bid, but it seems like some kind of roundtable with the new, you know, the incoming administration. There'll be a lot of turnover at the local level. Might be a good next step. You know, and Gail Brewer has always been so helpful to the Upper West Side, and she'll be back for at least 2 years. I understand that the new term is 2 years, and then everyone runs again this time because of redistricting. But you know, maybe a forum with, or not even a forum, but some kind of a roundtable with the community board, Gail Brewer, Linda Rosenthal, Daniel Donald, Robert Jackson, et cetera. And, you know, these are different times than when Monica Blum was explaining, and hopefully people now see the value, you know, given everything we've heard tonight, and seen with their own eyes. You know, there's definitely a stark difference in neighborhoods that have wonderful bids, such as the three that have spoken tonight. And so there might be more buy-in than, you know, when Monica said there was some pushback. So anyway, I ditto what Beth had to say. And thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay.
I want to just say one thing. Bids can expand. We've talked about it. We've decided not to, but it could be done. It's basically like starting a new bid, but that's not something to rule out. I don't want to put it on Peter or Nicole's plate, but you know, those are things that can be done as well. And I think somebody said merchant associations. I think it was Beth. You know, you could create a merch. You can't create it for the whole Upper West Side. That's the problem. But if there were a section where you had strong merchants who were interested, you start with the Merchants Association and go from there. So I think it's a challenge, but you just you can't do a huge space. That's the problem, you know.
Right. Peter.
I wanted to just put a shout out to Community Board 7, which has recently come out with some guidelines pushing for larger developments to have smaller spaces for stores. And this goes along with work that Gail Brewer has done over the last number of decades that culminated in her legislation. It was oh, come on.
You're talking about the rezoning.
The rezoning,
but I have
yes.
to tell you, the Columbus Avenue bid, Nicole's predecessor opposed that.
I realize, and a lot of property owners oppose it, but what it did was it provided small spaces and it protected those small spaces. Part of the reason that I supported it was because we had a landlord whose dad died. He came in, booted out 7 small stores, put in a Dwayne Reed. And the reason that the Dwayne Reed was put in there was to make a bigger sale price for when they were sold to Walgreens or whatever. And it never was functional. And that space has been never fully occupied since those 7 small stores were put out. So it's having spaces like what has been mandated by Community Board 7 and through Gail's research and diligence over the many decades that she's been involved in this issue. That there are spaces for small stores that are affordable, and they'll work with small property owners ideally. But in any case, I'll just say that Community Board 7 and Gail Brewer are both good allies in terms of block associations reaching out. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Well,
This might be
think,
an opportunity. Can I just,
yeah.
sorry, Liz, just to pivot. We haven't heard from Doug, and all that's been referenced might be a good opportunity to
Yeah.
hear from Doug Kleiman.
Sure, I'm very happy to be here. I consider everybody here neighbors and partners. As you mentioned up at top, thank you for the kind introduction. I have lived here my whole life. I practiced for 20 years, specializing in retail real estate. There was a slight correction. I think you said residential. I don't do residential real estate, although I'm licensed to. I do both tenant and landlord rep, and I am very proud, without listing my resume here, of procuring many small mom and pops that, and I, of quite a number, and quite a number of recent stores that have opened, even during the pandemic, which was very challenging. Half of my work during the pandemic was trying to make peace and between tenants and landlords and renegotiate deals that were already done to try to keep them in place, which is a extremely sad, scary time. And I'm happy to say that in most cases, there were some very good, happy stories. Not all of them were happy, but there were a lot of happy stories. Because at the end of the day, the essence of everything is that a landlord and tenant relationship and with the community is a symbiotic one. And in a perfect world, we don't live in a perfect world, but everybody should be happy. The community should be happy. The landlord's happy. The tenant's happy. Everybody's making money. Everybody's doing well. And that's the goal. I'm very optimistic. I'm not speaking officially on behalf of CB7, although I spoke with our chair and I am authorized to do, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the company that I work for. But I will say that I'm representing a lot of property that it's within the Lincoln Square bid, and I've participated and regularly participate in bid meetings. And Monica, we've had some incredible meetings regarding public safety recently. Without revealing any trade secrets, or I can tell you that some of the larger stores that I am involved with on the team in Lincoln Center, which is really over 100,000 square feet of space, we have quite a bit of activity going on. And I hope to be able to announce at some point when we can that those spaces, most of them are at least will be leased. I think it's fair to say, and I don't think anyone would think I'm betraying any confidence or confidentiality in saying that some of the larger spaces, everybody has to rethink the way retail is and the way stores are. So, and this is happening across the world, across the country, and definitely we're not immune to it in our neighborhood. So you're seeing a lot of spaces that are being leased. Yes, are food and beverage, restaurants, experiential, a lot of medical, quasi-medical, whether it be dental or veterinary. These are businesses that can't be replaced or duplicated, at least not yet, on Amazon or e-commerce. So, there are quite a number of those transactions. I'm very proud to say I'm part of numerous ones that veterinary, medical, fitness, and businesses that, again, you can't replicate on the internet. Educational, entertainment, experiential. A lot of these stores that were too big are going to be broken up. And that's the way it is. Now, with regard to the legislation, and I am very close with Gail, and I am thrilled that she's coming back, and I adore Gail. And Gail and I have spoken about this in person many, many times. The legislation that you're speaking of, which is a 40-foot restriction, it has a double sword edge to it. So, the economy expands and contracts, and obviously it was contracting. So there needs to be some flexibility for store owners to either grow as the economy is growing and then shrink. So yes, I agree. Small businesses are fantastic. Some of the challenges are now with some of the retail that was previously combined. If they break it up, they can never put it back together again. So that's very challenging. And I can say, that we've lost a few deals where we couldn't combine the spaces. And even though the tenants wanted to be there and the landlord wanted to be there, because of the zoning, we weren't able to lease it. I'm not pointing fingers. I understand that the legislation is extremely well-intended and it has a lot of benefit, but it does have some unintended consequences. So we just went through a tremendously difficult time. I really do hope that the pandemic is in our rear door. And I can say that there's a lot of really good things happening. You can look around and, you know, by the way, I see a lot of familiar faces here. I will say also, just as a testimony to all the bids, Peter, Monica, Nicole, you're always around within Community Board 7. I know that you're always at a phone call or emails distance. So I do view you very much as partners. And I think we're ex officio members of the bid by virtue of the fact that we're on the Community Board. So we really are part. Say is, Beth, on your lovely website, you guys put together a great, you know, collage of photographs and really sad, but, you know, aesthetically pleasing vacant stores. I was looking at that today, and I noticed that about half of the stores, at least on your front page, have been leased, and I can say that I'm responsible for at least a few of those. So there's some good news.
Right.
I don't want, it's not all doom and gloom. So anyway, I'm here to continue to be a partner. I live here. I love this neighborhood. I only want to see, you know, the stores filled and, you know, happy faces and, you know, successful businesses and neighbors. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
So I'm gonna have to sign off. So I just want to
I
thank
think
you.
it's time to wrap, definitely. Chris, do you want to get the community news?
Sure. Thank you all, and Monica, I understand, and all of you, if you need to tune out, we're gonna close this part of it, and we're grateful for your participation. Thank you to Monica and Phil, to Nicole and Peter, and thank you to Beth and to Doug for your knowledge and expertise, and Liz, as always, thank you for moderating this conversation. Does anybody have any community news other than outside of this conversation? I think I know that I believe Gail Duboff.
Yeah.
You may have wanted to share something, Gail.
Yeah, this is not related to what we've been discussing, but I was in on the Zoom for Community Board 7 when they talked about the new dock house at the 79th Street Boat Basin. And, you know, I'm a designer who has a great interest in architecture, and I was absolutely appalled at the design that I saw that was proposed and what everyone is assuming will be a done deal, as I was told. And I really want everybody to take a look at this, what I consider something that is so out of place for the boat basin. It echoes nothing of its surroundings. It is large. It is boxy. I walked down the promenade to just look at the space again this afternoon, and I couldn't believe what our visual line of field is at this point and how it will be interrupted with this two-story large boxy thing going up. So this is my first plea to everyone to please take a look at the design and let's get something going here and become vocal, because CB7 seems to be in agreement that this is inappropriate, and some people were very tactful at this Zoom meeting and didn't say too much, but it's terrible. And if this goes up, it's going to be decades that it's going to be up there impacting on Riverside Park. Okay, that's it.
Thanks, Gail. Before you leave, Gail, I understand that there might be a conversation that Helen Rosenthal's office is
on the 30th.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I had sent her an email. I sent a number of our local, Gail Brewer, Helen Rosenthal. I sent a number of people emails after this CB7 meeting saying we have to do something, and I got an email this morning that she is organizing a meeting just for that purpose to discuss it on November 30th. So if you contact her office to get put on the Zoom list for November 30th to discuss this proposed plan, what I fear is that everyone is just going to lie down and say, okay, it's a done deal, there's nothing we can do about it, but we can do something about it. And I'd like everyone to just raise their voices.
Thank you, Gail. Peter? You have to unmute. There you
Sorry. We have this Sunday a e-waste collection up at 110th Street and Amsterdam. And if people wanted to promote it, it is an opportunity to get rid of things that are illegal to dispose of right now. Things like computers and ancillary equipment for computers and actually TVs also. So Lower East Side Ecology is going to be collecting things from 10 to 2 on Sunday, the 21st. So just to be aware of that. And the other thing that's happening that Sunday is down at Amsterdam and 104th, which is the celebration of the inclusive playground, which was built right there. So that is also happening mid-afternoon. And so I just wanted to mention those two.
That's 11 to 2, that inclusive playground, and everyone should go see it. It's wonderful.
Good, good.
And where is the waste pickup going to be?
It's e-waste is going to be at Amsterdam between 109 and 110, and it's from 10 to 2. That is a tight timeline. It is a closed street, or it's an open street, but cars could pull in either at 110th or 109th and stop right there at the barricades to unload and deposit stuff. So just to be aware of that.
Thank you, Peter. Does anybody else have any community news they'd like to share?
Yes, I would like to, please. So this is Neil Burson again. I wanted to let you know about a couple of things. Recently, a private donation was made to restore the fire department's memorial at Riverside Drive and 100th Street. And the work, mostly pointing, has been done and completed. So that's a wonderful thing that a private citizen stepped forward to give us the ability to do that. And the work was coordinated through the Riverside Park Conservancy. I wanted to also tell you that the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Association is looking to have a expanded Memorial Day celebration here at the monument at Riverside Drive and 89th Street on May 30th of 2022. We already have a commitment from former Secretary of Everything, Leon Panetta, to come and deliver the keynote address. And we're looking for a lot of participation from local, national leaders, and hopefully you folks as well, to come and celebrate this wonderful event for us in honor of our past departed soldiers and sailors. So those are two developments upcoming. I wanted to congratulate your coalition in conducting that survey about this trash. I thought that was exceedingly professionally done. I thought the questions were excellent. And I also thought that you're giving us the ability to write some free text comments in there was very important. I think that's a valuable tool. I think you've probably collected some very good information that will help us, get some action items going on that issue, which has become more critical as the weeks go by with rat infestations and lack of appropriate and timely garbage collection. So thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for that. And for those who, I think everybody knows what Neil's talking about, but we partnered with CB7, as did One Block and some of the city agencies, and Peter participated in a conversation about sanitation and quality of life issues. If you go to our website, upperwestsidecoalition.org, you can see the YouTube replay of that meeting, and you can see the data presented. We're waiting to see what CB7 does, the Parks and Environment Committee. I suppose they will do a resolution, and then we will find out next steps on how we can all be involved in those next steps. Other community news: tomorrow, the 20th Precinct's Community Council is meeting at 7. it's an RSVP requirement. I'm not sure if there's still space available, but you all should know that there is a meeting at the 20th precinct tomorrow, community council meeting. I want to say thank you to Dee for launching our newsletter. It was awesome, Dee. And I also want to say thank you to Penny, who helped us get this map of the current coalition. You can see we've got nice coverage, and this map was useful for the, we pulled this out for the community board meeting as a way of saying, hey, look at us. So thank you, Penny, for that. And our next meeting will be December 15th at 6:30. Liz is putting together the program. We've talked about it being congestion pricing. We're working through the details on that. And with that said, I think oh, Melissa, her hand is up. Melissa.
I had it literally up and now I added the little yellow hand. So thank you. Just real quickly, a couple weeks ago, West 80s Neighborhood Association, my group, as well as Stop the Chop NYNJ, we were included at the Congressman Nadler, Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer press conference that was held at the West 30th Street heliport. And she was presenting her helicopter task force two-state multi-elected letter, sign-on letter to the FAA to support the federal bill that was introduced initially by Congress members Maloney, Nadler, and Velasquez. Congressmember Swazi has signed on also at this point. So it's very exciting. 30 electeds from both sides of the river, New Jersey and New York, have signed on. There may be some more. And you can read more about, we actually had a lot of press coverage from that press conference. So please read about that at stopthechopnynj.org and sign our petition if you haven't, and email us with any questions. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And with that, I think looking for a motion.
Also, can I say one more thing, Chris?
Yes.
We are looking to improve the newsletter. So if you could take time to read it and give us your feedback. Thanks.
Absolutely.
And we're collecting new submissions for the December newsletter. So send those as you did before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, I think looking for a motion to adjourn, because we're so official. And thank you all and have a great evening, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Chris.
everybody. Okay.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.